Hello and welcome to this training series on Sony Acid Pro version 5. Now, as we can see, we have a pretty complex kind of setup here inside of Acid Pro. However, don't worry and don't fret. This is actually a very simple workspace to work in. Alright, so why don't we go ahead and take a look at this workspace. At the top, we can see that we can see the file we're working in. Also, what kind of program we're working in, just like any other program. Underneath this we have our menus. We can see we can pull down these menus simply by clicking on the title. Some of these commands allow us to go ahead and execute things such as cut, copy, and paste. Also saving, closing, and publishing. Underneath this we have some shortcut buttons. Here we can see we can save. We could also cut, copy, and paste, as well as undo and redo. Now underneath this, here we're going to see that we have some special tabs here that will actually go ahead and retain to that of our timeline. We can see that one track leads into this track here. This is called our timeline, in which we can actually edit all of our audio. Also here we see we have some controllers. Okay, over on the bottom left hand side we can see we have the Explorer window currently open. As to the tabs here, we can see we have Explorer, Media Manager, Groove Pool. Also on the right hand side we can see that we have our mixer, in which we'll go ahead and mix in some of our audio. Also we can see we can adjust the workspace simply by clicking and dragging. Now one of the cool features here is by adjusting one thing, it's going to adjust all of my actual workspace. Adobe has also gone ahead and picked up this kind of interface with the newly created workspace such as After Effects version 7 and also Adobe Premiere Pro version 2. So we should be right at home if we've worked with these programs at all. And also we understand that this is actually a very useful way of navigating inside of our workspace. Now let's take a look at some of the windows and how exactly we can execute the commands in some of these windows. Looking here, we're going to see that we have something on the left hand side just next to my timeline. Now what is this called? Well, this is actually called my track list. We can see here that we can maximize the track height to pretty much just show that of the whole track. And we can also see here that we have a little blinking dot indicating that we're working with this track alone. We could also go ahead and minimize the track height, and we're going to see that's going to drop it down. We could also go ahead and see that we can move the stacking order of this simply by clicking and dragging. Also, let's say we want to move this down. There we go. We also have the ability to go ahead and rename simply by double clicking on this. We also have the ability to go ahead and roll over that of the track effects and apply some effects here as well. We can mute the track if we want. We're going to see that grayed out here in the timeline. We could also see that we can just use this to be solo. So what's going to happen is everything else is going to be grayed out. We could also go ahead and see that we have some presets here in which we can pretty much tell Acid how loud we actually want our volume. Right now it's set to -6 decibels. We could also go ahead and increase this by increasing the slider. As we can see, we can switch back and forth between the two. We also see down here at the bottom that we have the project tempo. We can go ahead and increase this or decrease it. We could also go ahead and look at the project tempo. This is it right here. Roll over here, this is the project time signature, the project key. If we go ahead and click on the key, we can see that we can get different ones as well. And we could also go ahead and get more of a different kind of project time signature. We could also go ahead and see that we can move this like so. Now let's say we want to go ahead and close this. Well, we could hit F11 and expand it out, and we'd hit F11 again to go ahead and decrease this. So we can see that we can expand this like so. Alright, and with that, we'll now go ahead and take a look at the timeline. We've seen how to utilize the track list. Now, we're going to go ahead and take a look at what's going on inside of our timeline. as we can see, as I roll over, we have this little pencil going on. Now this is actually a tool. We can see here we have all of our tools located at the top here. And I'll just go ahead and select that in my selection tool. And as we can see, we can move around. However, if I move over here, it turns back to my cursor. We can also go ahead and see that all of these tools only work with that of the timeline. If I go down over here, it doesn't really work. Alright, so what exactly is going on inside of our timeline? Let's go ahead and expand this out. We can see here that these tracks and now are going to pretty much be in the specified time from here, from point A to here, to point B. We can also see here that we have a flashing kind of line. This indicates where our time is currently set at. So, let's just say I wanted to go ahead and preview this and hit the play button. We can see here down at the bottom that we have all of our VCR controls. If we go ahead and hit play, it starts at this point in time. We can also see that if we want to go ahead and play from the beginning, all we have to do is roll over here, click on the button, and as we can see, it starts from that at the beginning. We can also see we can use our scrollers to maneuver around as well. We can also see that we can make the timeline much larger or smaller simply by clicking on these scrollers here. Also, you may be wondering what this is up at the top. This indicates our actual workspace. So, this is called the loop region, in which we can specify where we want to render at for our final output. We can also see we can scroll up and down here, and also we can choose to move down or move up by clicking on these little buttons here. We could also go ahead and scrub to make this larger and smaller. That also works for this as well. We could also go ahead and, let's say we want to hold down the space bar, or we want to, as we can see, we actually held down the space bar and it started playing. We could also see that we can use our 3-button mouse, our scroll wheel, and it's actually enlarging our timeline. Now let's just say we hold down the shift key while we hold down our scroll wheel. We're going to see that we have the ability to go ahead and maneuver in here as well. Also, we can zoom in here simply by selecting that of our magnifying glass. And as we can see, we can click and drag a selection and we'll be zoomed right in on that. Alright, so now that we understand how we can pretty much work inside of the timeline, we'll now go ahead and see how we can work with the docking station down below. We'll now go ahead and dedicate some of our time to the bottom of the screen. We've already seen here how we can work with that of the timeline and that of the tracks. So, while we go ahead and just focus on the bottom screen here, we can see that we have some tabs over here on the left hand side, and we also have our mixer on the right hand side. But let's just say we want to go ahead and adjust this. Well, let's just say I want to look at my Explorer, but we want more room. Well, we can see I can expand this out. However, I limit that of my mixer. Now, the way I'm going to be working inside of this training series is simply by clicking on the dots located here on the left hand side of my mixer. We're going to see now I can click and drag this over here like so. Once I release, we're now going to see that we have the tabs down at the bottom. So now we can select the Mixer, Explorer, Media Manager, and Groove Pool at one point in time. However, if we're trying to adjust this, and let's say we want to view multiple things, we would simply click and drag this out, and as we can see our Mixer and our Explorer at the same time. We can also see under the View menu that we have all of the different kinds of actual windows that can be shown here, such as the video preview. Also, we have the track properties and whatnot. We also see here that we have our track properties floating. Well, let's say we want to place this within our actual docking station down at the bottom. We can see I can click and drag, and as I roll over, it's going to pretty much snap like so. And once it snaps, we can see that we can create one large piece of actual real estate for us here so we can work in a more efficient manner. We could also see that the shortcuts are actually very simple to follow. That of Alt 0, Alt 1, 2, 3, all the way down to 9, and then we have Control Alt 1 and 2. As we can see, we can continue and put all of our windows that we might want to view inside of our actual docking station down below. We can see we can move back and forth as well, and just click on the tabs. Let's go to the chopper real quick. As we can see, I'll go ahead and shrink this down. Once we go ahead and select a different track, it's going to show up differently here in our actual docking station. And as we can see, it's different for each kinds of track. We can also go ahead and see that we can edit it here inside of the chopper.